Okay, welcome to day 2, everyone. And if you can just let us know you can hear us. So we are managing all the technical side of learning the live broadcasting. And so it was just, I want to engage the chat. We loved reading your mantras yesterday. Mindset is the heart, that's the start. And so if everybody, as we're getting started here, input a mantra so that others can see. And if you can't comment or post right now, that's fine. You can hopefully read the chat. We covered a lot of information yesterday and we'll be simplifying it for you further today. So we covered flow and metabolism of your hormone pathways, showing the many different hormones that we have, the interconnectedness between them. And today we will simplify those pathways further while moving into our topic of balance, where we talk about the calming, restorative hormones today.
And just a few housekeeping notes to start. So all of the files are in the Facebook group. So if you go into the Facebook group, on the top menu, there's a more drop down or a file button that you'll see. So the homework and the notes from yesterday are there. We will also upload after today the homework and the presentation from today. And then we'll also be emailing that out as well.
And it was really great reading through your homework and your posts, and bonus points for people who actually shared the wheel or your worksheet. You don't have to. You can also just put MMM, so mindset, movement, micronutrients. We are using that template again for today, today's homework and throughout the week. And so however you post, it's all welcomed. And those who posted a food picture as well as the wheel, you get triple points. And as soon as you create a comment, for those who have, or you commented on someone else's, or you asked a question, or you shared your story, the minute you do that, you tap into a greater energy of this experience. And so I really encourage you to do so. We're going to comment back and you're just going to build even further energy. So remember, we're all in this together in our wellness pursuits at any age, any sex, male, female, any health condition, or any lifestyle factors.
Yeah, and the common denominator that's bringing us all together is we all want to find more balance in our hormones. You know, even all the small baby steps are going to help, because that's going to help us to reclaim our energy and just have a greater experience of wellness. And, you know, even in the most like complex health conditions, we touched on this yesterday, and complex hormone imbalances, it's really the simple steps. And as long as we're doing them consistently, it's going to lead to change. So I don't know if any of you guys have experience with that or thoughts on that. Feel free to write it out in the comments in the Zoom or the Facebook. And then also, again, you can send us private emails, and just a recap of that email address. It's hormonechallenge@higherhealthcenter.com.
And for your homework, as we touched on the 3 pillars: mindset, movement, micronutrients. Mindset, as we said, is the key, the heart, and we wanted to share some amazing mantras we received, as well as how we're going to help you transform some of them. So these were what we received through the Facebook page and private messaging. I can do this.
I can get myself back.
I am on a path to feeling more energized.
My body is a miracle.
I'm in the flow of understanding and energizing.
My body is in perfect balance.
Energy, balance, and flow.
Working towards better health.
I'm not broken. Change is good.
I am in flow to fixing my hormone imbalance.
I'm one step closer to my optimal health.
The most important time is now.
These are our 2 favorites.
Yeah.
I'll say one and Kira will say one. Let go, let flow.
I ebb, I flow, I learn, I grow. I love that one.
Each day is a new day to better health. And so I wanted to share about transforming a few. So we had, the I'm not broken, for example. How can we move that? We talked about, you can come in at a let's say negative, right? So broken, your body hears broken. And so and then it acts in line with that. So let's transform that. So what would be a better word for broken? Please start inputting what you think, what came to my mind. And for the person who shared this, it's going to be unique for you, right? So what is the opposite of broken? So I came up with, I am healing. And then another person shared their mindset in their wheel. So they posted the wheel, great. And so they're tired all the time and stressed, hoping to get to the point where I can feel normal, not sure if I would even know what that is anymore, right? So that's where you're at. That is great. And so let's transform that. And I commented, I am rekindling my energy. I'm learning to listen and trust my body. And I am realizing a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so really work with your mindset, challenge yourself, get curious. This is how we create a context of wellness. And as I just said that, I got goosebumps on my arms of just, that's real, right? That is real heart of health, getting to the right mindset. And yeah.
I was just going to say that I love, just a quick point on that, because we kind of touched on this yesterday, where it's, you know, that having that knowledge of where you're at now, like accepting where you're at now, is so amazing, because it shows you, like, even though maybe it doesn't feel that good to feel those things, like to feel maybe broken or anything like that, but then you know where you're at now and you have a line for where you want to go, because often that opposite is really that guiding light that's going to help guide you there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you might feel a change in your energy the minute you switch to that more empowered thought. Mm-hmm. So just try that out and let us know. I remember one time, I've shared this with many people, I was just totally overwhelmed, completely depleted, worried I was getting depressed and going downhill, going into that murky place. And I couldn't afford at that time to, no, I mean, you never want to be down in that place. But I remember channeling it for myself and saying, Tara, okay, you're feeling anxious, stressed, worried you're getting depressed. You know, how do you want to feel? So I asked that question, how do I want to feel? And the minute I said, it was 3 words that came to me, you probably know for those listening, and no, it was just loving, kind, and calm. And the minute I said those, they were spontaneous how they came to me. I just felt my nervous system completely calm down and get back to a certain center. And then I could act from there. Yeah.
Yeah, good segue for today. Calm. We're going to feel calm today.
Yeah.
So before we dive into the content today, we got a lot of questions yesterday, which was great. Just kind of about if we could kind of simplify that hormone pathway that we threw up for all of you yesterday, that is quite complex. So yes, Dr. Tara, do you want to kind of simplify that whole pathway for us?
I do. And just a small giggle, the picture that we use for our presentation, I actually chose it because of the color and the fresh, white, clean appearance of it, but it had a lot of extra cofactors in there that I normally use another template. And so I posted that one onto the page, and I hope that simplifies it further. But here's the no pictorial, just my hands. Okay. So the top of the shower head is cholesterol. Cholesterol splits off to progesterone and DHEA. You just have to remember the key hormones. You've heard of them before, maybe some are a bit new, but we don't need to get into all the chemical precursors and metabolites. So it's just cholesterol shower head splits off. That's most important. Progesterone and DHEA. So then your progesterone travels down to cortisol. So this is your natural, your anti-inflammatory, your stress pathway. DHEA is going to your androgens, testosterone, estrogen. That's the simple term. So all we needed in your homework was to say, I really think I'm affected first at cortisol. And interesting, progesterone makes cortisol, right? And cholesterol makes progesterone, in simple terms again. And so I hope that helps. And really that is your framework that now today we're going into your calming hormones. And so Dr. Kira, introduce us to the specifics that we're talking about for the calming hormones.
Yes. So today the theme is all about balance. So we are going to be taking a deep dive into what we're calling our calming and restorative hormones. So those are progesterone, cortisol, melatonin, and DHEA. With hormones, it really is all about balance. We don't want hormones we get those symptoms. So maybe you're feeling sluggish or tired, exhaustion. That's kind of what we're talking about here, but trouble sleeping, any type of hormonal symptoms, you can get that when your levels are too high or too low. And so it's all about kind of like that Goldilocks position of hormones, like not too high, not too low, just right, and just right with each other. So today we're going to start with the calming and the restoring.
So now I'm going to share my screen.
And then just as Dr. Tara's sharing the screen, I'm just going to do another quick medical disclaimer today. So again, for those of you who are just joining us today for the first time, everything that we're sharing today and over the next 4 days that we have left will be, it's all for educational and informational purposes. So we're not giving any medical advice. So of course, if anything's really resonating or you have more specific questions, you can bring that to your medical team or to us if we are part of your medical team. But yes, all education and empowerment.
Okay. I'm sorry here. The bar is blocking my presentation. Oh, good. I can move it. Okay. There we go. It should flip into.
It's always a bit of a delay with this one.
There we go.
Perfect.
Great. 1 second. All right. Guiding questions for today. Now that we know more about the flow of our hormones, how do we apply it? How do you know which specific hormones are out of balance for you? And remember, just the calming ones we're talking about today. Tomorrow we'll go into energizing. How do we create balance within our cycle, both men and women? And how do we eat for balance within our cycles? All right.
Yeah, so this is the symphony of hormones. So what we really love to talk about is how we have this whole menstrual cycle. So often when we're talking to patients in visits and we say, you know, how long is your cycle? They'll often say, you know, 3 or 5 days, like those days of bleeding. But that's just your period. Like we actually have different phases in the cycle. So we are going to touch on the 2 main phases of the menstrual cycle. And then we're also going to touch on, do men have a cycle and what does their cycle look like, and then how to be in tune with the phases. So really by, you know, our goal here is that by understanding and like harnessing kind of the balance between these phases, then you'll really be able to experience more energy through the month for us, like menstruating women with those phases and through the daily cycle.
I also just wanted to bring in a quick point that someone asked about for the flow of hormones. Is it gender specific? So that whole structure that we spoke about just leading into this, that's for men and women. So everyone has that hormone structure. It's just about how much of each do you have. And so we'll touch on that further in the men's cycle. All right.
So rolling on. So now here's another graph for all you guys. Hopefully this one's a bit colorful too, but it's not as overwhelming as our other hormone pathway. So this is really showing the 28-ish day cycle that we as women have. And why we want to go through this is because a lot of us don't realize that our hormone levels and which hormones we have are different through the cycle. So day to day, we can't expect ourselves to feel exactly the same every day because we don't have, you know, the same hormones and same like physiology in our body. So we'll just kind of go over the 2 main phases. So you'll see here the follicular phase and the luteal phase. So the follicular phase goes from day 1 to ovulation, which is typically about day 14 in a 28-day cycle. And again, for you know, us that are menstruating regularly, it's anywhere from a 26 to kind of 34-day cycle is normal. So you might not be quite 28 days, but just for the purposes of this, it's going to be from day 1, which is we count as the first day of full flow, to about day 14. And what you'll see there is that in the beginning of the phase, our hormones are all actually pretty low, and then estrogen starts increasing, and then it's going to peak right before ovulation. So what's interesting is that, you know, estrogen is our dominant hormone here in this follicular phase, but we actually produce like almost no progesterone. Like it's just estrogen, and it's kind of steadily increasing. Once that peaks, it's going to cause that LH surge, which is the luteinizing hormone from the pituitary, and that just causes ovulation. So the egg is released from the ovary. Then the luteal phase happens, so that's from ovulation to the next period. And there we're going to see that progesterone is the dominant hormone, so we have more of that in our body, but we actually make some estrogen too, so it's quite a high hormone phase. And so, yeah, so progesterone increases, and then estrogen increases. So, and then both of them fall, and that's what causes the period. So from an energy perspective, like I really find this fascinating because we're kind of going to go through the estrogen and progesterone roles in terms of energy, but we can see that we're going to feel differently. And what we often see, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, is that often women will report feeling their best kind of in that follicular phase, like maybe the week before ovulation, and generally not your best in that kind of week before your period, in that luteal phase when the hormones are really high. So I think our goal here is to show how we can support your estrogen levels and support your progesterone levels so you can feel more energized overall, but while remembering that there are going to be ebbs and flows that we kind of need to honor through the month as well. So yeah, so hopefully that's kind of a good overview of what's happening through the monthly cycle.
And we usually find that a lot of people start to notice when we go through the days of when they, well, first we teach them to have more awareness of, okay, are you feeling more irritable right around your period or right before? So classic premenstrual syndrome, right? That's premenstrual. So it's right before you bleed. And it's good for men to hear this side too, to understand the phases. I know my partner, for example, he'll say, oh, I know what's going on right now. So, but we often see symptoms around day 21 to day 28. So that premenstrual time. Not always. There's also, we could notice, oh, that person's having more symptoms around the estrogen side. So the first couple of days of their period or before they ovulate, so that halfway point. And so really having an understanding of the rhythm of these two phases is interesting. And then when it comes to men, so we'll get to you, this is interesting. Mm-hmm. So the female cycle is more on a 28-ish day cycle. Of the first 2 weeks is estrogen, second 2 weeks progesterone. For men, it's more on a 24-hour cycle. So it's a day, and it's about testosterone peaking first thing in the morning, and then gradually will go down like the cortisol pathway we showed yesterday as well. Whereas, so this graph here is just showing for men, the dominant hormone is testosterone, and for women, that I wouldn't, like, estrogen and progesterone are dominant for them, but this graph is just showing the comparison because remember, testosterone metabolizes into estrogen. So we're just really highlighting those two components, and know that women, testosterone is obviously important to them as well. And so we may notice, we're going to talk about estrogen dominance. And so that's where your testosterone may be moving too quickly to your estrogen. Right. And so you may feel an overabundance of estrogen and not enough testosterone. So really, testosterone is for men and women. And then the key message is a women's cycle is 28 days and a male cycle is a day. And then there's questions coming through. Is this the same for seniors? So I actually think we could say for seniors, let's move you into more of a day cycle. Yeah. Right. That would be a good way to look at it. And so absolutely, you'll see how it doesn't matter about age or menopause, perimenopause, whatnot. We can always enhance our health at any age, any sex, any phase, any health condition, right? So it comes down to those basics, those simple steps we mentioned yesterday, and that we'll keep mentioning throughout.
Yeah, and I love that too, because I think like we're going to go more into rhythm, I think on day 4, but finding like, yes, like if you are still menstruating regularly, you might see that, 28-ish day rhythm that you're having. And it just is helpful to understand that we're not all having the exact same rhythm every single day. So like a little bit of grace for yourself too, if you're going through a phase where you feel like you can't show up all day and have that kind of 24-day rhythm. But exactly like Dr. Tara said, like during menopause, you might feel a gentle kind of rhythm, but I think your daily rhythm will become more pronounced, which is awesome. And
I hope to see grace, the word grace, such a beautiful word, in some of your mantras.
Yeah.
And just one more mention about this, the two graphs that we've shown. Exercise increases your testosterone, right? Movement increases testosterone. And so it'll cause short bursts or peaks of that testosterone. And then so just another example of you can fluctuate within the day, within your cycle. I mean, we might not touch on it in this presentation, but exercise would certainly, there's certain exercises to consider for your first 2 weeks of your cycle, or for morning and afternoon, and to the second half of your cycle. We're going to focus more on food for your cycles, but it's certainly a good point to bring in movement. All right.
Okay. So like we said, we've kind of broken down the hormones for you. There's going to be overlap, of course, but today we wanted to start with the calming. Tomorrow we'll get to the energizing, and that's because we need to restore in order to energize. And it's kind of like thinking about the yin and yang as well, right? So today we're restoring with yin so that we can really explore the yang tomorrow. So again, we're going to be going over progesterone, cortisol, DHEA, and melatonin.
And we're going to start off with one of our favorites, top of the list there. We are fascinated by this one and just love speaking about it. And I know Dr. Kira, you had a daughter, and did you think of naming her progesterone?
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's your middle name.
Okay, not agree. All right, so take us through progesterone.
Yeah. So progesterone is such an amazing hormone. Like we're saying, it's one of our favorites. And so in that, the hormone pathway that the hormone phases we showed you, we know that it's your luteal phase hormone because it's only made in that luteal phase. So after ovulation, the egg is released, and then it's the corpus luteal cells in the ovary that produce progesterone. So it's only produced in those 2 weeks. Generally, we think of it as our calming and anti-anxiety hormone. So it acts on GABA receptors. And like we've kind of been mentioning, there's a big link between neurotransmitters and hormones. So progesterone really acts on GABA receptors. It also has a bit of an influence on serotonin too, but estrogen tomorrow will really go into that, and serotonin. So it has that calming. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, so it's a very calming neurotransmitter. So how I think about this is like when progesterone levels are balanced in those 2 weeks before your period, that is when we should kind of feel a more calming, like grounded energy, right? So maybe it's not that kind of energizer bunny, maybe energy that you could feel in the follicular phase, but it's just more of a calming kind of grounded hormone. And I will say that in practice, this is often one that we will see out of balance, and often it's low progesterone levels. So there could be a couple causes there. It could be from lack of ovulation, so not ovulating regularly, in something like hypothalamic amenorrhea or PCOS, or even perimenopause if you're not ovulating regularly. Same with high stress. We've talked about that. Cortisol, that progesterone to cortisol pathway. And so progesterone can definitely be lower. We might not have like as robust, we might not ovulate and produce progesterone, or we might not have it as robust of an ovulation, and those corpus luteal cells don't have enough to be producing enough of that progesterone. And we'll often see in terms of what your symptoms could be like, it could be either like a short luteal phase, so actually less than those kind of 14 days that we showed in the pathway, or in that diagram. It could be spotting in your luteal phase, trouble sleeping, anxiety, things like that. What do you typically see, Dr. Tara, in terms of progesterone in practice?
Sleep. Always, when someone mentions sleep difficulty, and more so women, I would say, but the same, men have progesterone too. But women and sleep concerns, come to think of it, not a lot of men talk about sleep concerns.
Yeah.
For the men out there, let us know if you do struggle in that area, especially you're interested in this because of hormone balance. Please share with us. I am very interested in that. So women mostly, I notice they have trouble sleeping and they wake around 2 to 3 in the morning. And I know that I teach about how that relates to the cortisol pathway as well. So and next up is cortisol, but when we sleep, our goal is to restore cortisol, right? To really replenish that so that you can wake with more energy and more cortisol. And so for people who are off, for when we are off balance, because we're all going to be off balance at times, right? The goal is to keep rebalancing. I find that when someone says they're waking in that middle of the night time, it's likely because they've got their cortisol pathway is not trusting their body. And so then the body's thinking, oh, it's morning time, but it's only 3 a.m., right? And so if we can replenish cortisol, we can replenish progesterone then, and there's other things along with that, but you can have a more restorative sleep.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I would say sleep directly relates to the energy that we're talking about, and is such a common like hormonal issue that women experience, especially if it's kind of happening in that luteal phase. And the progesterone does have kind of a sedative effect for us. So when it's balanced, women might actually notice that they sleep better in that luteal phase when the progesterone is higher. But out of balance, that's when we need to address things.
Exactly. And I also really love that you commented on GABA and progesterone buddying up with GABA, right? The two go hand in hand. The buddy system of hormones would be serotonin and estrogen, our friends, and then progesterone hormones and neurotransmitters, the buddy system. So the hormone side, progesterone is buddies with GABA and estrogen is buddies with serotonin. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then so GABA, with the progesterone GABA link, one interesting fact is meditation and mindfulness builds your GABA. And so by building your GABA, you're supporting your progesterone.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Move on to cortisol. Let's go there. Let's do it. Can we have a little laugh about this picture as Dr. Kira and I were planning the presentation and talking about cortisol curve, right? So then curve, this is a curvy road and we want your cortisol curve strong in the morning, and then so you make the most cortisol in the morning and then it slowly comes down throughout the day and then stays down for you to have that good quality sleep. When your cortisol pathway gets flipped, and share with us if you have experienced this. You've been fatigued all day, you woke up sluggish, just unrefreshed, and then throughout the day you're trying to get energy, but it's just not coming. And then at the end of the day, when all the stimuli has settled a little bit, you're home from work or other responsibilities in your day, and you're unwinding, and that's when you get this surge of energy. So but no, now it's time to sleep, and why was I tired all day and now I have the energy? So it's like your pathway is flipped. It can also happen similar to what I said about progesterone sleep, that you go to sleep, you're so tired, you're exhausted, but then boom, you get this rise of cortisol too soon.
Yeah.
And so that opposite pathway. So we want to bring your cortisol down before bed, stay there throughout the night so that you're replenishing, you're restoring. And then when you wake up, so you're lying down, you're sleeping. Now, when you wake up, it's a stress on the body. So you're waking up, right? You want to make more cortisol to manage the stress. And so in order to be able to wake up, you have to build your gas tank, per se, right? You have to have a reserve or resources there that you can use to mount that response. So when we get fatigued, when we get run down, when we get off balance, our cortisol pathway of the bed sheet or that cortisol corner pops up, that's just, we don't have enough fuel in our tank. We cannot rise to the occasion. And a simple thing we do in practice is test your blood pressure standing and lying down. So it's called orthostatic hypotension. And so we test the lying down blood pressure, see what it's at. Then we have you stand, and your blood pressure should technically increase slightly, right? By about 5-10 points. It should come up because that's your body's getting up. So we'll literally measure you after you've been in a resting state for about five minutes, test your blood pressure, then have you stand up, test it again right away. And if your blood pressure went down, that is a signal that you are depleted in cortisol.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is cortisol affected by progesterone? Can you assume cholesterol issues? I'd love to let's answer it. But really we'll answer most of the questions at the end. So can cortisol be affected by progesterone? Certainly, they go hand in hand, right? So when you get low cortisol, you're going to call progesterone down to get more resources. Your body is smart. And this is why we want to tap into our intuition. We want to listen to the body. It knows how to work, but over time, when we keep challenging it, it starts to say, nobody's listening. It doesn't matter what I do, right? So when you get low on cortisol, you'll call your progesterone down to make more cortisol, but then you could get low in progesterone. And so they go hand in hand. And that's why looking at your whole picture of health really matters, or your whole metabolism, because you may be on the cortisol component, you may be flooding the system there, or you might be in the progesterone zone. And so it really chicken and egg.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating too, because there are so many, like there's this whole resource issue with the cortisol and the progesterone that we're talking about. But even like when you're under a lot of stress and your body is producing a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, that actually tells your brain that that it's not safe for your body to ovulate, right? Because your body's only going to ovulate when like there's resources to do that, because your body doesn't need to. So there is that factor too, that like a lot of high cortisol levels can really delay ovulation, and then that's affecting your progesterone production as well. Plus, we've gone into like the oxidative stress component of the ovaries too, which we'll talk more about that as well. But just that stress component there can affect the progesterone production. So it's totally like hand in hand as well.
And it's also important to touch on blood sugar balance here for cortisol. So cortisol is highly linked with our blood sugar and our insulin production. And so it's glucocorticoids, right? Cortisol is actually a glucocorticoid. So when we're stressed, we increase cortisol, we increase our glucocorticoids. And so, you know, your body in a stressful situation needs reserves. And so it secretes all that. It gets the glucose to where it needs to go. And so when you have blood sugar balance issues, or if you're putting too much sugar into your body, your cells need to get that sugar into them so that they can manage it. And so you need your insulin to bring the sugar from your bloodstream. So let's say you eat a sweet potato. We'll have a healthy food there. You eat a sweet potato, you get that blood sugar into your bloodstream. Now you need insulin to bring that glucose from the sweet potato into your cells so that you have energy, so that you can use it. And so blood sugar balance and insulin, if you are fueling your body with the wrong carbohydrates or sugars, then you're actually contributing further to inflammation. And stress causes inflammation. So this is what activates our need for cortisol. So through stress, through inflammation, we need our cortisol. We need to fuel our body with the right glucose to help our cortisol maintain its optimal balance.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, so this one is I know this is your favorite, Kira.
It's a tie between melatonin and progesterone.
Yeah, right. You'll have two children.
Exactly. No, I mean, I think we both love melatonin, right? It's such a fascinating hormone, because here we say it's more than just your sleepy hormone, because that's what so many of us think of about melatonin. Like we think of it as the hormone that helps us get sleepy at the end of the day and get into a good night of sleep, which is absolutely true. But it is also a very, very powerful antioxidant. Interestingly, the ovarian fluid, like the kind of fluid that bathes the ovaries, is really, really potent in melatonin. Like it has a high concentration of melatonin. So we think a lot of that has to do with that antioxidant potential. So it's helping to protect against any kind of oxidative damage. And melatonin also, interestingly, helps regulate our menstrual cycle, which a lot of like us probably wouldn't really think about. But because melatonin is kind of this master regulator of the rhythms, that it can also help influence the timing of that like LH and FSH kind of pulsatility from the pituitary gland, which helps with ovulation. So interesting, there's a lot of research done on like night shift workers and how they have more menstrual cycle irregularity. And so we think that melatonin is kind of the component there that's affecting it. So yeah, so it's a powerful antioxidant. It's also helpful in inflammation, reducing inflammation, in pain, like often in endometriosis and things like that. We can utilize melatonin to help there from a pain perspective, which is really interesting. And again, I think we've touched on this, but we need to know that melatonin is produced. So we have that cortisol in the morning, we wake up and it's higher, and then it's kind of going down through the night, which we just talked about. We want that lower in the evening. And then that's when it's dark outside. And then that's when our melatonin levels increase. So you want those increasing kind of when the dark starts, and it's going to peak in the middle of the night. And so that's why sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night, could be a melatonin issue, if you have trouble falling asleep. So I think that I'll often see that like women who are or men too, this is for everybody, but kind of lying in bed, you know, the mind's racing and you're like, I just need to fall asleep, but you can't. So you're not making enough of that melatonin. And what very much impacts that is the light exposure, right? So the blue light exposure from our screens, computers, cell phones, anything that has blue light, our eyes have receptors to see that blue light. And then basically it's telling your brain, like, it's daytime, you know, there's blue light out. We don't need to make melatonin right now. And then that's going to decrease the melatonin production. So that's kind of planting a seed for our homework today in terms of that light exposure and minimizing, making sure that at nighttime, you're really focusing on that the dark exposure and kind of getting rid of the light to help with that melatonin production.
And really interesting too about that, we think of melatonin as our darkness hormone, but as Dr. Kier is sharing about it being light, it's not only about decreasing your exposure to light in the evening, it's also about exposing your brain to light in the morning. And this was new to me too. I would say I only really appreciated this in the past couple of years, delving into circadian cycle, that stepping out into light first thing in the morning actually supports or fills your melatonin gas tank. I talk a lot about gas tanks. I filled my car on the way in this morning. So your stepping out in the light first thing in the morning is going to build more melatonin reserves that will come out in the darkness at night.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was melatonin, antioxidant, super antioxidant, right? Even if people aren't necessarily showing, well, I actually really like melatonin now just to regulate the circadian cycle and to provide in that antioxidant, anti-inflammatory support. So it's really becoming one of my top prescriptions. And some people have sensitivities to melatonin. There are other ways you can get around that, like coming in at the higher end, the serotonin pathways, because serotonin metabolizes to melatonin. So certain things can support your serotonin that will help your, certain thing can support your serotonin. So then you metabolize into more melatonin as well. And then, you know, even supporting your estrogen brings in that serotonin benefit to help with melatonin regulation.
Yeah.
Next, we go to DHEA. And this hormone is called the mother of all hormones. We have a picture of a shower head. So remembering that the DHEA being top of, you know, you turn your shower on, that's the cholesterol. So now you've got the hormones coming out. And so the first offshoot, so it's progesterone one side or DHEA the other. And really interesting to know about DHEA, we don't actually have receptors of DHEA in our body. It's where we have estrogen receptors, we have progesterone receptors, testosterone receptors. Those are plugging in to where they need to act, but DHEA doesn't really plug in. It's just really a substrate to create your androgens, then testosterone, estrogen. And so with that, you make DHEA in your adrenal glands. Everybody has adrenal glands. Adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. They are your stress response, right? So there is definitely a hormone regulation aspect. This is where any stage, any age, your adrenal glands are always there. They're always helping you respond to stress, right? And so DHEA is really that top hormone stress supporter along with progesterone. But just the difference is DHEA is more a substrate. It's not actually acting on reproductive systems. What it leads to will act. And so you can, I like to think DHEA is more like the daily cycle, right? Your daily stress cycle, whereas estrogen, progesterone follow more of a rhythm of the, first 2 weeks, second 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point too, because we've had so many of you guys have been asking questions about kind of these hormones post-menopause. So knowing that the DHEA does kind of contribute to that androgen pool. And so the testosterone that then converts to the estrogens in post-menopause, when we see more of the estrogen production, is actually in a lot of our periphery, like in our fat cells and things like that, where we make that post-menopause. So DHEA is kind of contributing to that. And we also included it here as that kind of restorative hormone because of that building quality. But it also, interestingly, does help to kind of buffer the effects of stress. So when cortisol, so when we're going through periods of high stress, cortisol is a catabolic hormone, so it kind of breaks things down, but DHA is an anabolic hormone, so it builds things up. So it's just a nice, coming back to our theme of balance, it just nicely balances out with cortisol too.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, so
I think for it, next step is,
yeah, let's go into the nutrition. Nutrition for balance.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's so much to say here about nutrition for balance. So we're going to kind of chat about like a couple of key things that we want you guys to walk away from this with. So we can think about it as supporting kind of like the follicular, the estrogen phase, and then nutrition supporting the luteal kind of progesterone phase. So what we wanted to highlight today as kind of a hormone superfood is flax seeds, because flax seeds are what's called a phytoestrogen. They also have good kind of fiber and fats in them, but phytoestrogens are really interesting because they basically help to modulate estrogen levels. So they can act as a very weak, they bind to estrogen receptors weakly. So like not strong, like weakly. And what that can do is that it can help protect us from any xenoestrogens, or which are like endocrine disruptors that we can get from our environment. So they're very protective for us. And the research is actually pretty good for flaxseed. So they can help with breast tenderness. They can help with increasing that luteal phase length. So that progesterone dominant phase, so kind of increasing that length. They can help with, I said, breast tenderness, promoting regular ovulation and hot flashes as well. So this is also planting the seed for our homework for today, thinking about flax seeds. But even if you don't have flax, or you can get the benefits from, and because the flax seeds also have a lot of fiber, which is important for estrogen detoxification as well. But other kind of seeds that have fats and fiber are great too. So like chia seeds and things like that. But yeah, that's what we wanted to highlight for the flax support for the estrogen phase. And same also getting back to what we mentioned yesterday in terms of the healthy fats to like build the hormones up in that follicular phase. And then, yeah, let's chat a bit about the luteal phase, progesterone phase nutrition.
And such a great pun, plant the seed. Let's bring in seeds. And many people may know about the seed protocol, and there's different thoughts on this, but I really like the idea of it. And so it's, focusing on certain seeds at the first 2 weeks of the cycle, and then other seeds at the second 2 weeks of the cycle. So expand from seeds, and also there's evidence to show supporting each hormone through all the phases is really important. You're just building your reserves again, the gas tanks. And so I wanted to talk about cravings and our progesterone side of the cycle. So that last 2 weeks. So again, first 2 weeks is estrogen phase, second 2 weeks is progesterone phase of your cycle. And men take it to a day, right? So progesterone phase, nearing your period, you may subconsciously want different foods. So you're craving chocolate or whatever it is. And we can feel eating for health, you need to eat clean all the time, or, and balance is so important with your nutrition and learning to tune into your needs. And so by understanding this, I myself have started to know, okay, pasta or sweet potato or carbohydrates or chocolate, when I'm craving that, I'm more in my progesterone side of my cycle. And it's actually important at that time to eat those foods. Whereas on the first 2 weeks, your estrogen, your follicular side of your cycle, you're a little bit more energized and you can go more of that clean, green eating, right? So the yin and yang of your cycle. When to focus on your yin. Progesterone is your yin.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because we, like, with that progesterone increase, progesterone actually increases our basal metabolic rate. So we need more calories in those 2 weeks before your period anyway. So sometimes the cravings come too, because you're actually just if you're trying to eat the same thing every single day, then maybe you're actually just not eating enough then. But even the way that our metabolism works through the cycle too, we just burn those carbohydrates better in that phase. So for sure, getting in those carbohydrates in the luteal phase.
And that brings up the question, well, I'm in menopause, how do I know where I'm at? Well, tune in, because you're still, your adrenal glands are still producing these hormones. And so you might find your own rhythm, right? So document when you are craving more. And instead of feeling guilty that, oh, I just had a whole plate of pasta, or I just had bread, whatever, maybe notice, oh, you know what? I actually probably need that right now, or could, right? So document it, and then try to find a bit of a rhythm in a month, or, you know, see in a day. So listening to the body is really, really important. And I love one comment in the chat line: I sleep so well since dealing with the root cause of my estrogen dominance. And estrogen dominance really happens when we don't have enough progesterone. So we always want to build up this progesterone with calming strategies that we're talking about here. And then that leads into also, how can you clear estrogens? So by clearing some estrogens, you're balancing out that estrogen progesterone. A funny other side way I look at that luteal follicular phase that Dr. Kira went through is it's like a chest, right? So two humps. Men and women, right? So you have the estrogen boob and the progesterone boob. And so finding balance in the two, and you don't want to be lopsided. So let's rebalance those. And so to clear out some of the estrogen, we look at liver health, and we look at brassica vegetables. Brussels sprouts are my favorite. Oh, this reminds me, I have to share my smashed Brussels sprout recipe on the Facebook page. I actually get cravings for this. And so brassicas, what other
cauliflower,
yeah, cabbage.
Cabbage.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have a key ingredient in those. The brassicas have a key ingredient called I3C, indole 3-carbinol, and that really acts on your liver pathways to clear estrogens.
Yeah, and the fiber there becomes really important too, because we want to clear that all in the liver, and then we excrete that through bile. So we want to get the fiber to bind that out. So the flaxseed, again, the fiber component there, but also any seeds and any lots of fruits and vegetables, just that really well-rounded diet is going to give you a lot of that fiber.
Let's move into our homework. So to help you pull this all together, and we'll keep practicing it over on the page in our emails. And so really, really challenge yourself to incorporate this. And so for mindset first. So we're talking all about balance today. Create a mantra around balance and grace, balance, yin, building. I'm building my hormone health. Restoring, yeah. So great. Just think of keywords to go with the mindset of balance. How can you create balance in your day and in your life?
Okay, so then for our movement component today, so I mentioned that we want to focus on building that melatonin production. So we're going to try and turn screens off, and you can dim the lights in your house, and hopefully turn the majority of your screens off at 8 p.m. to support that melatonin production that night. Or for the movement too, you can also draw the hormone phase, or the boobs, as Dr. Tara would say. Draw the hormone phase for 3 points for that.
Oh, we might get some creative pictures there.
Yeah.
Great, please send us creative pictures.
Yeah.
All right. And then the micronutrient piece, so the F's: flax, fat, and fiber. We will also be sharing a few of our favorite recipes. We noticed a great food theme and food interest over on the Facebook page. And so questions about chia seeds and flax recipes. And so we are getting flaxy, fat and fibery, and we'll share some really great things that you can do there, as well as my smashed Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
So you can submit this page you can see each component is 3 points. You submit this page for the 9 points. Other people added a picture of their meal or whatnot. You can add a picture of you turning off your screens and, everything's dark, whatever. It just is a really good reminder of what we're practicing. And then you'll have this worksheet at the end for each day to remind you of mindset, movement, micronutrients every day. This is the foundation for small steps you do daily that lead to big change, to transformation, and to balancing your hormones. Mm-hmm. Let's open the floor to a few questions. And I'm going to stop share so that it's.
So I see one here that's saying, my day starts at 3 p.m. when others want to relax. How do I flip it? So that's a great question. So like we talked about, we so commonly see that cortisol curve isn't the way that it should be. It's kind of can be flipped over. So by doing some of these practices that we're saying, so even like tonight, making sure that you're turning off all the lights before bed, like a couple hours before bed, to help with that melatonin production. And then in the morning, you want to get that exposure to daylight, like we showed on that one slide with the melatonin. So if you're just kind of balancing the light and the dark, that can start to help to get you back into a rhythm.
It's kind of like you create, if the person who asked that question, if it's shift work, then you create your own cortisol pathway relating to, so you need most energy at 3, that's when your day starts. So just pretend that's like the first in the morning time at 3, and then your cycle should be in balance from there. And that's why we love light, playing around with light to help you balance that out in the face of externally, the light is following a different cycle, right? So someone asked movement. So the movement section isn't exercise. Great question.
It is.
It's way more than exercise. And so for today, being balanced and calm, we want you to really practice those calming restorative exercises. So, I mean, you could do yoga and yin building and calming strategies. You can certainly add that in the movement section. We gave you a few examples. So we said about turning your lights off after 8, and oh my gosh, turning your lights off at 8. There was a second one. Oh, and drawing the hormone cycle. So it's the movement, the humps of the cycle. But if you share with us something you do calming, restorative wise, that counts as well.
Yeah. There was a great comment here that said, I rarely get cravings now since balancing my nutrition. I realize now I don't need coffee first thing to wake up, and I don't need sugar to get through the day. Good food is freedom, no more brain fog. So that's great.
Good food is freedom. And also just coffee, or the coffee does play around with your blood sugars a little bit too, right? So we've touched on it. And so blood sugar balance, for cortisol balance, for progesterone balance, right? It's all linked. What do I need to do to stop waking up in the middle of the night? Okay.
Balance these hormones.
Yeah, let's go back through. So anti-inflammatory actions, which will lower your cortisol and pull it down before bed, calming practices, breathing exercises to increase GABA, which increases your progesterone as well, clearing out any excess estrogens. It is also really important to know, where do you fall in the pathway? So we would ask you, are you stress? Give us some description of your experience of stress, or your level of stress over the past few months per se. And then that can help us know, do we think you're depleted in cortisol? Are you depleted in progesterone? And then so we would support those two pathways. And there's certain botanicals that build up progesterone, anti-inflammatory nutrients and botanicals as well. And so we might, for you, to help you stop waking in the middle of the night, we might focus in on that progesterone cortisol pathway.
Yeah, someone wrote, can exercise after a certain time in the evening be advisable? So that's a very good question. And we know that with exercise, that can definitely kind of increase cortisol levels. So there is going to be kind of an optimal, to kind of balance that rhythm, there's going to be an optimal time to exercise. So probably if you have trouble sleeping, you definitely don't want to be doing like intense exercise right before bed, because that can definitely increase cortisol levels.
Mm-hmm. And so the person who had submitted that question previous about waking up in the middle of the night, so they commented back to say they're not stressed, they're just waking up around 2 to 4 every night. So let's examine what is stress. It could be body stress, right? It could be inflammation within your system. So that's depleting your cortisol. Well, you feel mentally fine, calm, low stress, but is your body stressed? And so it still speaks to us right now, without knowing further aspects, that it's probably the progesterone, a progesterone piece, probably cortisol, progesterone linked. And then also liver health. That's a strong liver time. Liver is our detox stress organ. And again, physical stress, inflammatory stress. And so we would look at all those factors contributing into that waking. Share with us back if any of that resonated with you. And I wanted to answer this question about, does it make a difference taking Synthroid in the AM versus PM? Great question leading into tomorrow being thyroid. So thyroid is more energizing when we're in balance. And so really most often Synthroid is prescribed, or thyroid medications are prescribed first thing in the morning. However, I don't know about you, Dr. Kira, I've certainly seen people taking Synthroid in the evening, and there's certain, you know, medical doctors do prescribe it in the evening too. It's very personal. And, but sometimes when we're seeing in dysregulation, we may consider switching when you take the Synthroid to that morning time.
This is a great question that you'll love. When is the best time of day to use the red light therapy? Before bed for relaxation? Because the red light is like a sunset, right?
Do you want to go in and do you want to go
No,
for it?
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, I'll go for it. Okay. And I know who asked this. Hi, Kim. Okay. So first, okay. Talk about energy. I had someone recently say, I'm doing everything and I'm just not feeling the energy. And we had lent this person a red light. And so I said, well, when are you doing the red light? And he was doing it in the evening. And I said, no. First thing in the morning, get to the red light. And it doesn't have to be red. There's a lot of benefits to the red. It's that sunrise light, red hues that we just don't get in our day-to-day. It can be the white light. So you go out on a sunny day, it's beautiful and sunny right now. That's white light. You're getting that benefit of circadian rhythm, or circadian rhythm encouragement, I guess, from any light except for blue. So I really think the red light should be used, or light should be used to mimic our circadian cycle. Sunrise, red hues, so first thing in the morning. Sunset, red hues in the evening. And so how we're mimicking evening red light without having a red light is saying, turn the blue light off. You don't get that sunlight, white light in the evening, so that's not a variable, but you are being exposed to a lot of that blue light. So use red light to mimic sunrise, sunset for circadian rhythm, for optimal melatonin production, optimal sleep cycle, so you wake with more energy.
Awesome. Well, it's 1:02, so I think we should wrap this up. Yeah, and
lots of great questions. Yeah. We're going to extract them, and we'll be responding to them on the Facebook page. So if you really have a burning question you want us to answer, we're going through all of the questions there as well. So just if we didn't get to your question here today, just post it for us or anonymously email us. We are looking forward to answering those further. And so watch for the email coming out shortly, recapping today, as well as your homework. And remember to go to the file section of the Facebook page where there's no chatter on that portion, so you can just directly see the attachments. All right, so everybody create some balance today: grace, balance, yin building, and nourishment, restoration. Any other calming word there, Dr. Kira?
And walk out to today with some grace as we move into tomorrow, where we'll be chatting all about the energizing hormones.
Amazing. All right, have a great day, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye.